The legacy of lies. My entire childhood, I felt like a guest in my own home, while my cousin Natalie was treated like the golden child. It took me 20 years to understand why. My name is Julia, and I grew up with a constant, low-grade ache in my heart, a feeling of never quite measuring up. The source of that pain was always my father, Daniel, and his blatant, bewildering favoritism toward my cousin. I have an older brother, Ben. The two of us were a team, bound together by shared confusion, and a silent pact to look out for each other. Our dad was a good provider, stern but fair, with us. With Natalie, he was a different man, soft, indulgent, and endlessly attentive. Natalie is the only daughter of my Uncle Henry and Aunt Clara. She's a year younger than me. From as far back as I can remember, our lives were forcibly entwined. Every morning, without fail, my father would wake me up extra early. We'd drive across town to pick up Natalie from her house. Then he'd drive us both to school. I asked constantly why she couldn't take the bus like every other kid in her neighborhood. His answer was always the same, delivered with a firmness that brooked no argument. Family looks out for family. Think of her as your sister. But I had a brother. I didn't need or want another sibling, especially one who was foisted upon me. At school, Natalie was shy and clung to me like a shadow. She struggled to make friends. While I had my own circle, if I spent lunch with my friends instead of her, she'd report to my father in the afternoon car ride home. He'd frown at me in the rear-view mirror. Be kinder to your cousin, Julia. She looks up to you. It felt like a betrayal. Why were her needs always paramount? My Uncle Henry and my dad were incredibly close. Their own father had been distant, so they'd raise each other in a way. Henry, the older by 3 years, was my dad's hero. He taught him how to throw a football, how to change a tire, how to talk to girls. That bond extended to their families, or at least it was supposed to. My mother, Evelyn, never seemed entirely comfortable with the arrangement. Ben told me later that she found Aunt Clara to be overly familiar and intrusive. Clara had a loud laugh and a way of touching people's arms when she talked that made my mother subtly stiffen. Their marriage was unconventional. Even as a kid, I picked up on whispers. They had an understanding, an open relationship of sorts. Aunt Clara would sometimes share overly personal stories with my mother, who would later tell Ben, to keep him aware of the household dynamics, that it made her skin crawl. Some things are not for sharing, she'd say, tight-lipped. When Aunt Clara and Uncle Henry visited, my mother would gently shoo Ben and me outside to play, away from the adult conversations. The year my mother was pregnant with me, Aunt Clara confessed she desperately wanted a baby too, but she and Henry were facing infertility issues. It was causing strain. My mother, ever practical, suggested alternatives, adoption treatments, but those were expensive. My mother's pregnancy was difficult, and my birth was traumatic. She suffered a catastrophic hemorrhage and didn't survive. My father was shattered. Ben, just 7 years old, was caught between grief for his mother and wonder at his new baby sister. They've told me Dad never once blamed me. He'd hold me and cry, whispering that I was all he had left of her. Those first years were hard on 3 males raising a baby girl, but they did with a tender, clumsy devotion. Ben became my second shadow, my protector. He never fought with me. He'd let me have the last cookie, the best spot on the couch, endless patience. We formed a unit, the 3 of us, a small fortress against the world. A year after I was born, Aunt Clara miraculously got pregnant. Everyone was overjoyed for them. When Natalie arrived, she was instantly woven into the fabric of our lives. Our father's dream of a united family seemed to be coming true. As little kids, it was fine. But as we grew, Natalie's personality solidified. She was sensitive, prone to dramatic tears, and unaccustomed to sharing. Her parents rarely corrected her. At school, if a game didn't go her way, she'd flounce off or have a quiet meltdown. Other kids started to avoid her, which only made her cling to me more fiercely. I was her designated companion, her social lifeline. It was exhausting. If we were watching TV, we watched what Natalie wanted. If we chose a restaurant, it was her pick. Saying no meant sulking, tears, and ultimately a lecture from my dad about being accommodating. Once, I was invited to a sleepover. Aunt Clara called my dad and insisted I take Natalie along. "It's so selfish to leave her out, Dan," she'd said, and I could hear her voice through the phone. My dad agreed. I had called my friend, humiliated, and asked if my cousin could come. The answer was a reluctant yes, but the night was awkward and I wasn't invited again. As we entered our teens, it got worse. Natalie developed a habit of inserting herself between me and any boy I showed interest in. She'd appear out of nowhere, loop her arm through mine, and say, "Hey, I'm Nat, Julia's best friend and basically her sister." Then she'd proceed to share some cringeworthy childhood story, like the time I'd tripped and fallen into a muddy puddle, framing it as hilarious when it was just embarrassing. It felt calculated, a way to undermine any connection I was trying to make. Ben and I both knew college would be on us. Dad didn't have substantial savings for us. He'd helped Ben with some books, but loans were a reality, so I buckled down. My last 2 years of high school were all about grades, extracurriculars, and scholarship applications. Natalie thought I was wasting my youth. She'd text me pictures of parties, call me to complain I was boring, once even showed up at the study hall trying to drag me to a movie. "Live a little, Julia. You'll die old and regretful." I stood my ground, but the guilt trips were constant. When acceptance letters came, I had a choice. One great university was in the same city as the arts college Natalie was attending. The other, equally good, was a 5-hour drive away. The family expectation was palpable. Natalie was already talking about us getting an apartment, exploring the city together. The thought filled me with a quiet panic. I chose the distant university. My own life, my own space. My dad was furious. "You're choosing this just to get away from your family?" he'd shouted, his face red. "My family is you and Ben." I'd shouted back, "I'm not running away from family. I'm running toward my future, and I don't want to spend it as Natalie's keeper." Uncle Henry and Aunt Clara were offended. Calls came in about how disappointed they were, how much Natalie had been counting on me. I stopped answering. The decision was made. The day before I left for college, I was packing in my room. I heard a car pull up and peeked out the window. It was Aunt Clara's convertible. She often came over when Ben wasn't home. I decided to stay quiet in my room, not in the mood for a fake, tense farewell. But then I heard their voices drift up from the patio below my window. Curious, I crept to the edge and listened. My dad's voice was low, reassuring. "Don't you worry about a thing. It's all taken care of." Aunt Clara's reply was syrup-sweet. "I just feel so guilty, Dan. All that money. Nonsense. I started that fund for her the day she was born. She'll graduate debt-free. It's the least I can do." The world tilted. A fund? For Natalie? Started the day she was born? I felt the blood drain from my face. I just signed for tens of thousands of dollars in student loans. Ben was still paying us off. Why did Natalie deserve this secret safety net? I stumbled back to my bed, my heart pounding. A horrible, sickening puzzle was clicking together in my mind. The favoritism, the forced proximity, the way Aunt Clara and my dad sometimes exchanged looks that were too long, too familiar. The fact that Natalie was born just a year after me, right after my mother's death. My dad's unwavering loyalty to Uncle Henry which now seemed less like brotherly love and more like a massive, life-altering debt of guilt. I called Ben, my hand shaking. I told him what I'd heard. There was a long silence on the other end. Ben, I whispered, the words tasting like poison. Do you think, could Natalie be Dad's? He didn't say it was impossible. He just sighed a heavy, weary sound. I've wondered, once or twice. She has a smile, not Uncle Henry's. That was all the confirmation I needed. We had to know. I devised a plan. The next day, under the guise of final goodbye, I met Natalie for coffee. I gave her a tight hug, and as I did, I discreetly plucked a few stray hairs from the shoulder of her sweater. It felt vile and sneaky, but the need for truth was a physical ache. The wait for the DNA results was the longest week of my life. When the email arrived, I opened it with my eyes half closed. The result, 99.7% probability of a half-sibling relationship. She was my sister, my father's daughter. The anger was immediate, a white-hot wave. Then came the grief. For my mother, for the childhood overshadowed by a lie, for the brother-uncle who was being betrayed in the worst way imaginable. Ben was stoic when I told him, but his voice was ice. That bastard, all those years. We agreed not to confront Dad immediately. What was there to say? Instead, we decided the truth had to come out, but on our terms. I asked Ben to drive me to college, not Dad. On moving day, I invited Natalie over to say goodbye. Dad was in his element, doting on her, asking about her classes. She was bubbly, talking about her new apartment, and pointedly, this amazing college fund my mom and dad set up for me. I'm so lucky not to have loans like you, Jules. I just smiled thinly. Ben arrived, and the atmosphere turned arctic. He loaded my boxes without speaking a word to our father. Dad looked confused, then hurt. When it was time to leave, Dad stepped forward for a hug. I took a deliberate step back. His face fell. Is something wrong, Julia? I looked him dead in the eye. All my pain and fury condensed into one sentence. I wish Mom were here. She'd know what to do with all your secrets. He flinched as if struck. I turned to Natalie, hugged her, and slipped a small envelope into her hand. Open this after I leave, I murmured, in front of everyone. As a failsafe, I had already emailed a scan of the DNA results to Uncle Henry. The truth wouldn't be buried again. The storm hit within the hour. My phone blew up. Dad, Aunt Clara, a cascade of desperate, angry, pleading calls and texts. I ignored them all. Then Uncle Henry called. I answered. Julia, is this real? His voice was broken, old. I wish it wasn't. I said, my own voice cracking. I'm so sorry, Uncle Henry. He was quiet for a long time. I could hear him try and control his breathing. Are you okay? He finally asked, and the sheer kindness in that question, amidst his own world collapsing, made me sob. He comforted me. He told me I was brave. He thanked me for the truth. The fallout has been nuclear. Uncle Henry and Natalie moved out of the family home immediately. Aunt Clara has been unleashed, a torrent of venom via text. She calls me a jealous liar, a homewrecker, says I've destroyed the family. She claims the affair was a mistake born of grief after my mother died, that my dad was vulnerable. She even had the gall to text, your mother would be ashamed of you. That one I deleted. My father, Daniel, has been silent. Radio silence. No explanations, no apologies. In a way, his silence is the loudest confession of all. The guilt is heavy, but the resolve is heavier. I did the right thing. Many have asked if I've reached out to Natalie. I haven't, and I don't plan to. Biology aside, she will always be my cousin in my heart. The bond we were supposed to have was poisoned by the lie that created it. I don't blame her, Not at all. I hope she finds peace away from this mess. But I cannot force a sisterly relationship that was built on a foundation of deceit. As for my father, some suggest I hear him out. But what explanation could possibly suffice? He slept with his brother's wife, fathered a child, and then spent 2 decades orchestrating an elaborate charade, manipulating my childhood and Ben's to cover his tracks, all while treating his secret child like a princess and his legitimate children as an afterthought. That is not a mistake. It's a lifetime of betrayal. Forgiveness isn't on the table. Uncle Henry and Natalie visited me at college last weekend. I was anxious, but Uncle Henry pulled me into a hug the moment he saw me. He looked tired, but his eyes were clear. Natalie offered a small, tentative smile. We found a quiet cafe. Uncle Henry confirmed he'd cut all ties with my dad. I looked up to him my whole life, he said, his voice thick. Turns out I was looking up at a ghost. He is divorcing Aunt Clara. When I showed him the abusive text she'd sent me, his jaw tightened. He took photos for his lawyer. It's over. Completely. Then Natalie spoke. She said she returned every cent of the college fund to my dad. It felt dirty, she admitted, looking at her hands. I told him not to contact me. Uncle Henry, he's my dad. The only one I've ever known or wanted. My heart ached for her. Her whole identity had been upended. Uncle Henry then confessed something that chilled me. The night he found out, he'd driven to our house, intent on violence. Natalie followed me, begged me not to. She saved your father's life, Julia, because if she hadn't been there, he didn't finish. He didn't need to. We parted with a sense of grim closure. The truth, however ugly, is finally free. Ben and I are closer than ever. We talk every day. We're making plans, jobs in the same city, an apartment maybe. We are building a new family, one defined by honesty and the loyalty that was missing in our childhood. The fortress of me, Ben, and my mother's memory remains. And for now, that's enough.